Good morning, one and all. A warm welcome. Sage here for Kalkine TV, reporting to you live from Sydney, and you're watching the Global Markets Roundup. Let's dive into some of the key highlights and happenings from Friday. Starting with the US market. And the stock indexes around the world rose on Tuesday as US technology shares extended the recent gains, and as earnings news was mostly upbeat, while the US dollar weakened and MSCI's gauge of stocks across the globe gained 0.69%. And the benchmark US indices edged higher on Tuesday, October the 19th, as strong quarterly earnings of companies for the third consecutive session lifted the investors' risk appetite. The S&P 500 was up 0.74% and the Dow Jones rose 0.56%, while the Nasdaq Composite rose 0.71% and the small cap Russell 2000 was up 0.36%. And traders have apparently ignored the inflation and supply concerns as the quarterly results lifted their mood. On Tuesday, the Commerce Department said new home constructions dropped in September after increasing in August, while building permits fell to a one-year low. And although there is demand for houses, builders face increased challenges like labour shortage and the rising cost of raw materials. Housing starts fell to 1,555,000 units in September. This is down 1.6% from August, the department's data showed. Technology, healthcare and utility stocks were the top gainers on the S&P 500 index on Tuesday. Consumer discretionary and consumer staple stocks trailed. 9 of the 11 segments of the index stayed in the green. And of the total S&P 500 companies reported for the last quarter so far, about 80% of them have surpassed expectations. And the S&P 500 companies are likely to register 32.4% growth in the third quarter. And moving on now to the futures and commodities market. Gold futures were up 0.18% and silver increased by 1.83%, while copper fell 0.94%. And the Brent oil futures increased by 0.90% and WTI crude was up 0.92%. Looking at the bond market, and the 30-year Treasury bond yields were up 3.75%, while the 10-year bond yields rose 3.86%. And the US dollar futures index decreased by 0.16%. And now it's time for another small break, but stay tuned. I'll be back with the Asian and Australian market updates.
Hi there, James Preston for Kalkine TV. Are you into gaming and virtual reality? Does AI and the endless possibilities it entails capture your interest? Or are you constantly trawling through the web to try and discover the latest updates and innovations in the tech space? Well, let us do the work for you. From the latest product launches to shocking affairs on the World Wide Web, exclusive interviews and information about the top companies like Apple and Google to brand new tech startups vying for your attention. Kalkine's Tech Beat has the latest in what matters in the world of technology. Join me every single Thursday on the Tech Beat, exclusive to Kalkine TV.
Welcome back, Sage here. You're watching the Global Markets Roundup show by Kalkine TV. And some positive earnings and defensive buying kept Europe's main stock index in the black on Tuesday, helping offset losses in Sweden's Ericsson and French consumer goods giant Danone after downbeat results. The Pan-European Stock 600 rose 0.3%, staying close to the one-month highs, and the UK market is trading in a narrow range ahead of the all-important inflation data, which will be declared tomorrow. And the UK government has signed a £400 million deal with Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which has Bill Gates as the key investor. And the UK government and venture fund will both invest in technologies that will help fight climate change, and each party will contribute £200 million over the next 10 years. MoneySupermarket.com Group's shares of the digital service provider were up by over 8% after it announced the acquisition of Maple Syrup Media, which operates in the consumer cashback business, for initial cash consideration of £87 million and a further £14 million is deferred. And moving on to RHI Magnesita, NV shares of the specialty chemical maker were up over 7%, following the announcement of its third quarter trading update. And the company witnessed strong demands for its products during the period. And the International Consolidated Airlines Group is next, whose shares of this passenger airlines company were down for the second consecutive day, and the stock price declined by over 4.5% as investors feared reducing profitability and revenue in the airlines sector due to the lockdowns. Japan's Nikkei closed higher on Tuesday, boosted by the heavyweight technology stocks that tracked Nasdaq's gains, and even as concerns prevailed ahead of the domestic earnings season starting next week. The Nikkei share average ended up 0.65%, while the broader topics edged up 0.36% after briefly turning negative earlier in the session. And the Chinese stocks closed higher on Tuesday, led by consumer staples and agricultural stocks, as the country's market regulator eyed better support for private firms after weak economic data. The blue chip CSI 300 index rose 1%, while the Shanghai Composite Index gained 0.7%. And the South Korean shares ended higher on Tuesday, boosted by the tech heavyweights that tracked Nasdaq's gains and easing concerns over China's property sector. The benchmark Kospi closed 0.74% higher, rebounding from a 0.28% fall on Monday and marking the fourth gain in 5 sessions. The Australian share market may rebound on Wednesday, supported by gains in the energy and metal-centric stocks on the back of firm commodity prices. And the domestic market would also track the strong cues from the US stock markets, which ended higher overnight on reporting season optimism. And the ASX 200 fell marginally in the previous session. And the Australian dollar rose on Tuesday on growing expectations that the central bank will be forced to tighten the monetary policy much sooner than expected, despite minutes from its latest meeting reiterating its dovish rates outlook. The Aussie dollar was up 0.41% at $0.7442 after touching a 6-week high, even as minutes showed the Reserve Bank of Australia still does not expect to raise the interest rates till 2024. US gold futures gained 0.15%, reaching $1,769 an ounce. And meanwhile, Bitcoin last rose 3.49% to a near record high of $64,201.08. Let's look at some Australian company updates before we wrap up. And the National Australia Bank, or NAB, said that it has appointed James Spenceley as a non-executive director. Adairs' total sales have been hit by mandated store closures in New South Wales, Victoria and the ACT during the first 16 weeks of the financial year 2022. Oz Minerals expects annual gold production to increase and its cash cost guidance lowered. And that's all for now. Thanks for joining us in the report, but keep watching Kalkine TV for more market updates. Sage signing off.